thank you everyone. Thank you for your attention and thank you for being here and for your time. So we're going to talk about this after panel 1, where we looked at nature in our bodies, and now we'll look outside, what's happening outside. And just briefly, so Matilda, you're a physician and scientist. Elise, you're the founder of SUGi, and Vicente, you're an architect and former chief architect of City of Barcelona. It's great to have you. We have a mission. We have 20 minutes to do this panel and be smart, insightful, and look good, right? Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, all right. So maybe I'll turn straight to Matilda. Let's go to the science. I'll just refer back to what Tari was saying earlier. He said something about 70% of the world population by 2050 will be moving into cities. And that brings a lot of things. Noise pollution, light pollution, biodiversity loss, and the list goes on. I will not enumerate them. We don't have time for that. But Matilda, the question is, how strong is the evidence that access to nature improves human health? And of course, I mentioned about the risk, heat, air quality, noise, which can be effectively addressed by nature-based solutions.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And I can say also, well, yeah, you look better. I haven't seen you from this side before, but I can also hope that after the break you forgot everything that was said before, because it has already been stated, right? There is a lot of evidence on this. And I would say that apart from the things that I have to say, right, okay, first of all, already the global population living in cities is over 50%. So we already most of us live in cities. And I tend to like talking about the positive sides as well. So that's why I started working with nature. But we also have to remember that living in cities is important for civilization. We have education, jobs, culture. Closer to me. A mic. So those are the good things. It's not only risk factors living in cities. There are reasons for why people move into urban areas, right? Mm-hmm. But it's what we have to look into is, of course, how we can bring nature into the cities to combine the built environment with green areas and blue areas for that sake. Mm-hmm. Because yes, there is a lot of evidence. Professor Williams already mentioned this, that it's. I think it's time that we make a real case for the fact that we do have evidence on this. And I would say when I started doing research on this about 15 years ago, it was still relevant to say that, yeah, maybe it could be that we need more studies on this. But by now, I sometimes feel, okay, we need to speak a different kind of language. We have enough evidence. We can say that, yes, there are many health outcomes provided by living in nature and close to nature, interacting with nature, and we've already had all these examples provided, whether it's touching nature or just viewing nature or moving in nature. That has a lot of impacts on a number of chronic diseases.
We'll go a little bit deeper in a couple of minutes. Maybe let me turn to Elise here. Elise, probably quick word. SUGi, I know that you've planted more than 250 pocket forests in over 25 countries. Based on what Matilda just described, so what is driving demand today for these forests? Is it health, climate, resilience, beauty? What can you tell us about it? And practically, how do these microforests help, cool down streets, if you have some interesting insight to share with our lovely audience?
Yes, thank you, Asha. Many questions. Good afternoon, everyone. But let me first zoom out for a minute and tell you, what is a pocket forest. So SUGi is a grassroots movement, and we bring life to cities by creating ultra-dense, biodiverse pocket forests of native species. Take this room, would be a perfect pocket forest. Not sure if it's allowed, but we'll start with the soil, plant densely, probably triple of the amount of people here, mulch heavily, and in 2 to 3 years you create a micro living ecosystem, a self-sustaining ecosystem. So think of them as a biome. We don't plant trees, we create these micro ecosystems. And it came really out of the idea, a bit of a personal idea of how do we bring wild nature back to where we live and work? How do we make it accessible? And how do we make it transparent? And how do we actually then build upon that, because it's one thing to transform unused spaces. We've done a lot also here in London, but it's another thing to then activate them, and that connectedness with nature that we heard a lot about here. And to your question, so 250 pocket forests, and that goes from Beirut to Seattle and from Sao Paulo to London. And each and every pocket forest has its own story. And the way that it was possible is that it was really through the local communities. So it's a global network, but it's hyper-local. So every pocket forest touches upon an element that was needed there. And that's also the success of them. The reason why they thrive is that it's the people that live with it, and some dance with it, some takes meeting in it. We have done 150 outdoor classrooms in schools, so 100,000 children, joined in the planting. But through that, they create eco clubs in their schools. They do temperature measurements. So you create that idea of environmental stewardship and citizen scientists. So I can touch upon more examples, but
We'll get back. Let me just turn to Vicente here. We'll have time to expand a little bit, but Vicente, we've heard the science, we've heard a lot of things, and those local initiatives. So you, as an architect, how can architects help cities really shift from, contributing to climate and health crisis to moving and becoming part of the solution through what you call a concept? I would love to hear about that, Biocities.
Yeah. Now that we are in London, Churchill say that we the humans, we make our cities and our buildings, and then the buildings and the cities make to us. I mean, they form us, because somehow cities are not something that grow alone. We build them, and we build them because we want to create some places where to live, to interact with other people. So if we see a short story, in the 19th century, we had new materials with the steel, we have the coal, we have the steam, the trains, and so on, and this creates some kind of cities. In the 20th century, there was some revolutions, and then we have the concrete, we have the development of the cars, and we have the functional city where we segregated residential neighborhoods and industrial neighborhoods. So all the history of humanity is based also in the evolution of the cities that we make and where we live. And now, normally, these changes happen after big crises. I mean, all the development of the industrial city in the 20th century was after the First World War and so on. And all the development of the concrete industry happened after the Second World War. By the way, if concrete will be a country, will be the third country that do emissions of CO2 to the planet. Yeah. So the big inventions in the 20th century, the cars, concrete, and functional segregated districts are destroying the world, because are somehow creating a lot of emissions. And then the question is how we can reinvent our cities.
Right.
We did it before, we changed the way we were living, and now the topic, following what Mark say, we need to make cities that follow the rules of nature. So, Mark say that trees has millions of years of evolution, and they are incredible machines. Cities are only 10,000 years old, and in 1,000 more years, they will fly, But for the moment, we need to think what we need to do right now and what we can do. So today, cities are generating a lot of CO2. We have many car displacement. We use a lot of concrete. We have petrochemical. We import goods from all over the world. We need to do cities that follow the rules of nature. We can use timber to make our buildings. We can produce
some great examples. There are already some great examples in some cities. But the question is why?
Every change takes a lot of time when we are talking about cities, because cities are the biggest invention that the humanity we did. So that means that it's like a transatlantic, in order to change the orientation, you need to convince many people. I mean, you need to convince the mayor, you need to convince the investors and so on, and even the citizens. So now we are doing this movement, but the question is, we have small samples in some cities, we need to transform completely completely the way we make cities.
Vicente, we'll get back to that scaling part. Let me just move to the health part. I think that's interesting. And large-scale studies now are showing that greener neighborhoods are linked to lower all-cause mortality, reduced depression, anxiety. I won't list everything. But how strong are these causal links, and how can this evidence be better disseminated, to drive change at scale? Matilda, tough question, little time.
Thank you. Well, how strong the causal links are there, you mentioned already the typical health outcomes that have been studied, and there are, as you say, there are coming new studies every week, and new study designs, and what we need is, of course, the small, with large cohorts that are longitudinal, so we can follow people over time, so we can say that there is actually a causal effect, meaning that we know that it's not, because if you have a cross-sectional kind of study, then you don't know if it's whether people are richer and for that reason can afford living in a green, nice area, and for that reason are healthier, or if it's actually an impact of nature. But we do know from the few longitudinal studies that it seems to be an actual impact of nature itself. We also do know to say that it's a causal effect, we need to know that there is a mechanism, and we already heard from Tari Hatala, for example, about the biodiversity mechanisms, which are hardcore objective evidence, right? And there are also brain imaging studies showing that people living in greener areas or coming from the countryside, for example, have a different vulnerability, as can be measured by brain imaging, to social stress compared to people living in cities, for example. So yes, there is causal evidence on that. And how to communicate that, how to make this causal evidence to have an impact on policy and practice. We clearly need to, we actually published a study a few years ago when we looked into this. Why is it so difficult to communicate this evidence? And there are different reasons. For example, you already mentioned vested interests. Like it's not always that the green department of a city has the strongest financial resources. We're also speaking different languages. Like I said, we always talk in science about, okay, more studies are needed, right? But that's not really how a politician speaks.
Yeah.
And there is a cognitive dissonance. This to nature-based solutions, okay, it's coming in EU at least, but it's still not really the most. Still, I think that quick fixes, technological solutions are what is comes most commonly, typically, to the minds of policy and decision makers.
Thank you, Matilda. Elise, turning to you, just to let you finish what you started, maybe it's what are you learning from your pocket forest, if you have some facts and figures and things that you can share with us?
Yeah, thank you. So, everything that is discussed today touches upon these pocket forests, from health to well-being to cognitive learning to creativity and inspiration. But just to give two examples, the global north will be incredibly different to the global south. But for reasons of time, I'll take two examples. So Seattle, Mark, you touched upon the Chief Seattle expression. And we work a lot in the US with indigenous knowledge, and our pocket forests are really created completely in sync with what is important for them. And our first forest, the healing forest, was planted at a correctional facility together with the inmates. And today, that forest, it's 5 years old, it's thriving. It has grown to such extent that today the willow is being harvested to create sweat lodges for the inmates. The berries are being harvested for the elders in the longhouses to make teas. So there is this complete weaving of land and people together. But then if you bring it back to London, is our highest concentration of pocket forests. We have 31 pocket forests here, and that goes from Barking and Dagenham, Newham to central London. And think of them, as urban acupuncture. The more needles you put in the body, I think it will heal faster. The thing is, here in London also, it's really interesting when you plant with children from Barking and Dagenham, from central London, it all comes down to the same. The first 2 minutes is like, ooh, we can't touch the dirt. We're going to get dirty. 5 minutes later, they're rolling in the soil. So it's really interesting how we can literally very quickly undo what has been told and reconnect with what is needed. And also, with Kathy, we recently done a study on 3 pocket forests in London where we're looking into the psychological and physiological benefits of what does it mean to have wild urban nature around us. And so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
So literally, I have 2-3 minutes. Just let's move to the solutions. Vicente, tell us, why is it that we are not able to scale fast? Is it governance? Is it culture, financing, outdated buildings? Is it us? Who is the problem?
You know, it's a mixture of all of these. We need to take decisions. I would like to put a sample. Today we were talking about the fires. So we have 3 problems that we need to solve. One is climate change connected with fires. There is also a problem of housing all over the world because the price of housing is growing up. And also we need to build many more housing. And third, we have a problem of the rural abandonment. So the question is, if we think on how to address these 3 problems with one solution, that means to put resources from the cities into the nature in order to manage the nature, to grow correctly the nature, and so on, we could produce materials like timber to be able to build these new housing projects that we need to do all over the world. You know, in Africa, I did a school there. It's incredible because they have a lot in Cameroon. They have a lot of timber, but what they do is they export their timber to Europe and China, and they import cement to make their concrete, and they make their new buildings with concrete. What is incredible, you know? So we should really try to develop this new, projects that must be developing in Africa using their own resources, and we should learn. The circular bioeconomy is a great word or concept, but you know the circle must be small.
Yeah.
We cannot make take timber from Africa, send to China to produce some product and to sell in America. You know, we need to use develop regional economies.
This is my next documentary, Made in Africa, next year. I'm filming
Good.
that.
Right.
Just to wrap it up, there are very interesting people in this room. If, from your own perspective, given what you do, Matilda, Elise, Vicente, what would you like them to do? Be bold. Tell them. Tough one. Go, Matilda. I know you want to tell them things.
Yeah, sure. No, bring the children to nature. It sounds very cliche, but I do think that's where we have to start. And all right, we have it's good to have them exposed to biodiversity, but I think also they are the future, right? And if the children don't know what nature is, they're not connected to nature. I think this planet has a lot to lose.
Elise?
Yeah, I think the situations can be very dire, and when we bring these pocket forests, we immediately see the sense of hope. So hope is like, go not far, do something, go into your neighborhood and act. I think really needed today. Small acts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can be tough. Come on.
2 things. We need money.
I couldn't say it myself. I had somebody to say it.
You know, talking is great. It's very cheap. But making things is hard. So we need to put resources. But the world is coming in that direction. So become leaders of your own future, and then we'll do something together. And this is for Mark. We should do a living lab connected with timber construction, because this is something that will show to the others that this is possible in every region around the world.
Mark, we need to do that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.